I'm Ashton Addison from the Crypto Coin Show, and today on Blockchain Interviews, we have Kevin Coutinho, founder of LayerOneX, here to talk about blockchain interoperability, security, AI, and more. Kevin, thank you so much for taking the time, and welcome to the show.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I've been looking forward to this one.
Likewise, I'm always interested in learning more about how to communicate blockchains together better, safer, and explore new ecosystems. I don't want to be stuck on Ethereum when there's all these new nascent blockchains that we can connect to. I'd love to hear more about what you and your team are building at LayerOneX first, then we can dive into all those topics.
Yeah, for sure. First of all, good morning, good afternoon, good evening to whoever is going to watch this. So LayerOneX is a next generation decentralized blockchain that empowers cross-chain interoperability, but at the same time, we are here to eliminate the bridges as well. L1X is being built into two different phases. So first phase was we built the L1X core and the XTalk technology. So the L1X core has its own virtual machine, which is also EVM compatible, but XTalk, that is where the cross-chain recipe lies, and that is the bridgeless infrastructure. In the stage 2, we are actually focusing on quantum resistant innovation to provide quantum safe cross-chain message and storage feature that can be leveraged by dApps building on multiple chains without actually having to integrate quantum resistancy directly into the other networks.
Wow. I would love to touch on that later. I've been curious about what happens when quantum comes in and how do we protect against it and use it for the benefit of blockchain. I would love to know more about how you got into this. Obviously, there are a lot of issues in blockchain communication and bridges, hacks, things like that. So how did you stumble upon building a solution to solve all of this?
Yeah, I started, with computers when I was 8 years old. And since then I've always been interested in, building something with computers that could help, further build softwares or even everyday people. And, one of my company that I founded before this was Australia's first blockchain-based rewards platform that got listed on the Australian Securities Exchange. And while building the reward system, I, used EOS. Back then, it was probably one of the best blockchains that you could use. And the customers that we had, which were the retailers, had a lot of problem bringing their data onto the chain, and also issues about not, broadcasting their customers' information to everyone out there. And that's where I started thinking about, an interoperability protocol itself. But while I was doing this, I started to do my PhD, in blockchain interoperability and quantum computing at the University of Western Australia. And that's where I found that this requires a holistic approach, because you can't be something and then transform into someone in Web3, because there are so many moving parts to this. So that's where, me and the researchers spent more than 8 months drafting a holistic 210-page white paper. Reading that white paper, it's like a nap waiting to happen. But if you definitely want to learn about interoperability and, the stages of them, what current situations are being faced, the white paper is a definite read.
Wow, that's in depth for over 200 pages. I'd love to take a look at it. Do you think from a high level you could talk about, without LayerOneX, where is the blockchain industry at with cross-chain communication, transacting different dApps across different blockchains and transferring tokens across different blockchains?
Yeah, I have a term for this. I like to use the word brick without LayerOneX, which is, the first one. Yeah, the first one is B, right? Bridges are broken. And bridges are, a great piece of technology 5 years ago, because as you see, the evolving nature of the requirement for multi-chain, which could mean, your tokens going from one chain to the other, has now gone into logic, which actually regulates your token flowing from one network to the other. That's where bridges are not efficient enough to handle that. And we've already seen with the hacks that happen. The other ones are, the relayers and the oracles introduce centralization risk. What I mean by that is, if the decision making of moving from one network to the other in terms of message passing is on a third party, centralized relayer that's using a different tech stack, that's using a completely different micro validation approach, that is where these kind of technologies get centralized. Of course, then the most important one, where there are so many incompatible blockchains out there, that make true multi-chain execution impossible. But at the same time, I think this is unavoidable in a multi-chain world. But with the current technologies, there is still a problem moving between different VMs. Like if you go even to XLR today, you go to Squid router today, you still see that you can't swap between Solana and the Ethereum network. Of course, then the big boy, which is the cost and complexity, because at what stage in the project lifecycle are you choosing to go multi-chain, right? If you're too early, it's too complex for you. If you're too advanced in your life cycle of your project, it's too risky for you. So there is this confused bandwagon of decision making that current tech is actually providing. And of course, the quantum threat, which will break cryptography, and I'll get a little bit more into it. I love quantum, but I'll get into it later on, where no one is even talking about quantum based interoperability, where we know that layer ones actually being quantum resistant is a long way home. But how do we get started with it? I think the brick model kind of encapsulates the current situation and the problems we are facing.
Yeah, that's really fascinating. And with somebody who has Ether, for example, and they want to communicate into another blockchain, but they understand, okay, bridges are broken, there's also risks there. Is there a way that you can explain how LayerOneX solves this problem without explaining all of quantum physics, in how it's safer and more secure?
Yeah, I think I like to use this analogy of the workout machine, right? So let's take that analogy over here. While you use a bridge, right, you think about, there are 4 components to it. If you remember this, as a viewer, it's okay. If you don't, that's fine as well. So there is the relayer contract, there is the adapter contract, there is a logic contract, and there is a token. Whenever you send a message from one chain to the other, the relayer picks it up, gives it to the adapter to make sure that, if you're sending it to the logic contract, it's compatible, and then the token is minted. What it means is, if you go to the gym, and based on how much you work out on that workout machine, you get certain points which you can redeem for cash. This is the scenario. Now, what happens over here is, there are certain hacks that have happened where the relayer has been bypassed and the adapter has been spoofed in a way that it allows you to go and mint tokens. In the workout example, it would mean you could perform exercises fewer than actually what you're getting paid for, and trick the machine that you are actually doing more than you work out, right? With XTalk, with L1X, we don't use any of these contracts. Now, as an example, there is the XTalk module that listens to events coming in from any of the compatible chains we are on. We are on 35 plus chains that is natively integrated into the infrastructure. We listen to that information, and then that information is passed on to L1X contract, where it verifies whether the information actually coming through is valid or not. It creates the payload and then passes on to the contract that you want to call straight away. So if you want to go and send money from one network to the other, or exchange value from one network to the other, you don't have to go through these redundant contracts that you would go through on the bridge. You talk straight away to the other chain.
So that's what the XTalk technology inside of LayerOneX is, the communication immediately into the other chain.
And to that point, because the whole blockchain works on how many computation or calculations you do. If you don't have these many contracts, that means you don't have to process that many transaction, actually bringing your cross-chain transaction fee 80% down, and at least twice as fast.
And how does the security compare to bridging and traditional communication for dApps on the layer one security side?
Yeah, I think, the first one is that, the bridges are the weakest link, right? More than 60% of the hacked value come from bridges. So we know that, bridges are weak. Now, when you try to compare it with them, firstly, you have, the native trustless cross-chain execution, where you are relying on primary set of decentralized validators from a layer one protocol to validate the message for you, which is not a client or which is not a light chain validating this specific message. It's giving it the credibility it deserves, number one, right? Number two, you have a multi-chain smart contract. What I mean by that is, we believe that the assets should never leave that specific chain. So if you have an asset on Ethereum, it should stay there. If you have Bitcoin on BTC network, it should stay there, right? With the logic as to if I receive $100 into this account, then automatically go and provide an NFT to this user. This specific logic is executed on L1X, where we have contract standards specifically for cross-chain interoperability. So we don't have to choose a new programming language to install security until and unless you're moving a country on the blockchain. So for majority of the requirements, these standards, borrow from certain standards that are already secure, which does the job. And of course, in terms of bridges having multiple different connection points. So let's say you're trying to go from one network to the other. It takes you 3 to 4 minutes on the bridge. The longer you are in that pipeline, the higher is your risk. So are we here? Because even the time taken is less, the risk is also lower from the time perspective.
And does this work specifically well with any parts of Web3? For example, with DeFi, there's often liquidity pools and you're trading coins back and forth. But you also mentioned NFTs there, and there's hundreds of other use case industries for Web3. Did you build this for any specific things like DeFi, or does it just work the same and well with everything?
It works with any category or any industry where you want to move value from one network to the other, number one. Number two, you want to decide how to move that value. Number three, you don't want to take that value and fragment it on one specific chain if you want to recognize that value on the other chain. So if these three things are your requirements, this specific technology is well suited for it.
And in terms of decentralized application communication between chains, do dApps actually have to develop their app onto the LayerOneX blockchain, or can they use the protocol through other chains? How exactly does that work?
Yeah, so our goal is to unite all blockchains, and we want to be the Google of Web3. And what I mean by that is, let's say you are an existing project or a new project. You want to build on one specific chain, or you want to go onto multiple specific chains. You've got a decision metric that you need to fill. Regardless, you can use the XTalk technology where it is integrated with L1X, but it is not required for you to do it. So as an example, if you want to move message from one chain to the other, you don't have to deploy anything on L1X. Number two, that is also where we are focused upon. We believe that interoperability is still at its infancy. And to prove that, less than 1% of the projects have their coins on multiple networks. There is a big difference in you having your coin on multiple network and you being multi-chain. And the difference is, we are trying to solve the problem of you going on multiple networks first before you decide what you want to take along on these multiple different chains. So there is that cycle that a person or a project has to follow, which is being skipped when you look at certain protocols that provide cross-chain interoperability as of today.
That's good to know. And I want to touch on that quantum topic that you mentioned. If you could explain quantum resistancy. But first I want to ask sort of a high level question that people that don't know a lot about quantum, they don't even know a lot about crypto and interoperability, they often ask is quantum computing a risk or a threat to Bitcoin and to blockchains?
Yep. Okay. Let me start with this, right? The NSA has given a notice to be ready for quantum before 2030, right? That's not even whole 5 years now. Second of all, to understand whether this is a risk for us or not, the ability to crack RSA, ECC, which is the cryptography that is used today to generate public private key pairs or to sign your transaction, you might require, for example, let's just do a comparison. You might require 10,000 qubits to achieve that, for example. Today's qubits are at around 1,000. Of course, it's with IBM it's more. But let me put it this way: more than achieving the ability of what a quantum computer can do, the question also over here is how fast a quantum computer can solve its problem of understanding what to do next. Because in quantum computing, you have two things, a qubit and error correction. What I mean by that is, how fast is your quantum computer versus how much errors does your quantum computer make? Research, including Google and IBM, are focusing on reducing the error. What actually means is I would need less of my computation power to break today's cryptography. Regardless, what AI has done to today's world, quantum is taking out a hammer straight at the door. It's not killing you slowly. So for something like that to be quantum ready and to be quantum resistant, I think it's a paramount step that we need to take in Web3 today.
And how do you prepare to be quantum resistant now, sort of projecting what's happening or what's going to happen 5 years from now?
So the current solutions in the quantum world, if you look at Web3 today, are divided into three different categories. So the first one is the protocols are trying to upgrade themselves. So Ethereum has this thing called a splurge, where they are trying to look at quantum-based cryptography. The second one is there are quantum-based chains itself coming up, that claim to be quantum resistant. And the third one is, an off-chain, on-chain solution that can be used by multiple different, networks. So these are the three categories. And just to clarify, just by introducing quantum cryptography resistant techniques or solutions in your protocol, that does not make you quantum proof, right? There is a huge difference in there. Now, what LayerOneX is trying to focus on is a solution that can be used, let me put it simply, as a plug and play model for dApps protocols to be quantum resistant, without changing their core infrastructure. Now, before I finish on this topic, if you look at, if there are major upgrades happening, for example, right? Let's say I'll get into the L1X solution later, but if you say major upgrades happening, then the interoperability protocols that rely on signatures on multiple different networks will also have to upgrade. Now, if there is an inconsistent, discrete upgrades where they are following their own norms to upgrade their own protocols and features, it's going to be a nightmare to coordinate all this into an interoperability protocol, which is not ready for that yet.
Yeah, that's a great point. What would happen in a scenario if one of the major chains, like Ethereum or Solana, became broken by quantum, and then there was this interoperability where, that could affect all of the other chains if they're all communicating efficiently and through blockchain interoperability?
Yeah, I think, first of all, like if you look at Bitcoin works on, hashing algorithm where Grover's algorithm, will reduce the size of computation required by half, but it's still achievable to break that cryptography. Tomorrow, if Ethereum, which uses the ECDSA and RSA based signature schemes, breaks, that means all the other protocols using the same cryptography is going to break. And when that happens, the asset will be worthless. I mean, it's like the bank opening its doors and saying, go for it.
Yeah. And I'm curious if AI fits into this as well, because obviously quantum computing is coming, but the growth in AI over the last couple of years has been more than exponential. And I feel like that's going to play a role in, it sort of ties into all of this. So is there a specific role for AI in interoperability and quantum resistance?
Yeah, I think there are three different angles to this. One is Microsoft coming up with their whole different architecture on how to achieve quantum supremacy. The other one is let's go and increase the number of computation power, not focus too much on the errors. And the third one is let's just focus on errors and make high quality processing. Now, in the second and the third one, when AI fits into the quantum computation side itself, where how does logical qubits move to physical qubits, meaning how do we make sure that we can achieve quality processing with an AI model? There, IBM and Google are already onto it. Like Sycamore has already been designed to work with AI-based algorithms to improvise it. On the other hand, from the application and the protocol perspective, when these kind of things happen, the post attack or pre-attack, logic that you need to execute, probably that is where AI could fit in. Where if you have a public key on the internet that is available, and if there is a quantum threat, your assets would be compromised. But if you don't have a public key available on the internet, your assets could not be compromised. Now, that being said, AI could fit in beautifully over here, where if there is such an attack happening at certain place, because you don't even have to break cryptography, you could brute force a certain network, taking on the staking capabilities and try to malfunction it. But if that happens, then automatically moving the assets to a certain place or triggering certain smart contracts, this is where AI could definitely help.
That's great. I appreciate that that insight. And there's so many things to think about as we get closer to the AI singularity and quantum computing, and how blockchain is going to fit in this and become quantum resistant and AI resistant. What are some of the plans for you and your team growing LayerOneX over 2025 in how you're continuing to develop the protocol and move towards these milestones?
Yeah, so right now we have successfully built structure and XTalk infrastructure where we've got more than 25 plus projects building on it. We've got something called as L1Xapp.com, which has more than 110,000 users actually performing swaps. We have processed millions of cross-chain transactions already, in terms of the messages being passed from one chain to the other. Now, that being said, there are two things that we are actually working on right now. Number one is we are launching a multi-network asset issuance standard where you don't have to go in and change the behavior of your contracts on multiple chains if you want to go multi-chain. An ERC20 contract that is pretty standard, which you use, that will come built in with cross-chain capabilities. Number one. And number two, what we are focusing on is a quantum resistant paradigm where we are actually building four to five different paradigms, which are cross-chain message passing with quantum resistancy, where you can store information in L1X or you can just pass the message. Also, the next paradigm is about storing that specific information on L1X, even if you are built on any other chain. The fourth one is about rollup, where we believe that rollup should be eligible for multiple different types of networks, not just one network being rolled into, because you're trying to put all your eggs in one basket. And the fifth one is we are building an easy to use SDK where developers can come in and deploy quantum resistant applications on any of the chain they wanted, right? Not only on L1X, and use the cross-chain features which we have, and that is going to complement the already existing SDK which we have that allows you to build multi-chain application in less than 60 minutes.
Wow, very exciting, Kevin. I'm looking forward to seeing that play out and just make it easier to make blockchain apps and have them on different blockchains. And for those people who aren't developers, maybe they're in DeFi or they do a little bit of trading, is there a way that they can interact with the protocol and test it out and learn more about it?
Absolutely. And, they can go to l1xapp.com, and I can assure anyone watching this that it would be the most beautiful Web3 UI and user experience that you will ever see. It is taking the concept of an operating system and putting it on the web. So l1xapp.com, which will allow you to swap coins, and we have introduced a new technology in there where you can swap bridgelessly in a decentralized manner without even connecting your wallet. Wow. So if you have a cold wallet and you want to perform a swap, you don't need to connect your wallet. We don't recommend people connecting wallets to L1X app or anywhere else. It is a security issue, so if you have a cold wallet, you just want to perform a swap, you can swap without connecting your wallet. And we have introduced a model where in the coming week, it's going out to the people, where swaps are essentially going to be free of cost for you, which will include free gas fees for your life.
Wow. That's very cool. I feel like there's going to be a time in the near future where the connect wallet button will disappear, and we won't need to go through those processes. It will be different. So I'm going to check that out for sure. Is there a way that people can learn more about this on the website as well, or on the socials, or where's the best place to follow along with these updates?
Yeah, I think first, if you just follow us on Twitter, we are very active on Twitter. We update the roadmap. We update any feature going out. Twitter is the first place where it goes to. Then, of course, the Discord. And if you just bookmark the swap page on l1xapp.com, if you just go in there, it has a widget section where all the new updates are published on a 24-hour basis. So each and everything is in there. It's housing 110,000 users, and that is also going to be transformed into a Web3 store for the 25 plus projects that are building with us, because building is one thing, getting users is another. And we want to help these projects on the journey of cross-pollination of users across these platforms.
Definitely. Well, I appreciate your insights into blockchain operability, making the crypto transfers safer, more decentralized, quantum resistance, how AI fits in there. And it's all going so fast, it's hard to keep up. And it sounds like you're really staying on top of it, especially in the quantum realm, which is a whole other world when blockchain gets there. So I'm looking forward to seeing how you and your team develop that quantum resistance and everything else on LayerOneX. And I'll leave a link in the show notes to the platform, the socials, the 200-page white paper, which I'm sure people could, if they want to know more, there's definitely information in there. Thank you so much for your insights, Kevin. All the best with everything moving forward with LayerOneX, and would love to have you back on in the near future.
Thanks for having me.